Hello and welcome to the Christ Baptist Church devotional as we're going through the book of Genesis, having gone through now all the way through chapter 30. Genesis 1 to 30 is what we've gone through from creation all the way to choosing Abraham, the life of Abraham, and now Abraham having Isaac and Isaac having Jacob and Esau. God's promise to Abraham of having many descendants and being brought into the land of Canaan is being fulfilled. And it started with one child of the promise, Isaac. Not Ishmael. Ishmael was not a child of the promise. That was done through Hagar, the maid of Sarai, because they were barren. And so they had one son when Abraham was 100 years old, Isaac. And then after that time, Isaac got married when he was 40, had his first children when he was 60, and he had two children, Jacob and Esau, twins. And after that, we've seen those boys wrestle and fight, and the younger, Jacob, is actually ending up to be the child of the promise, carrying through while Esau went off and he married several wives intentionally and trying to hurt his family, and really is not received the blessing because he despised his birthright. He went off into the wilderness, and Jacob has gone back to the father, or gone back to the family of his grandfather Abraham to go find a wife. He found Rachel, and Rachel was of the family of Rebekah, his mother. And so he was deceived by literally his uncle, his wife's brother, who tricked him into marrying the wrong woman, Leah. But then he worked 7 years to get Rachel, but he ended up having just Leah. So he worked another 7 years for Rachel. So he was deceived out of not being able to get his wife for the work that he promised. And out of that, we've seen those two women now competing with each other, but then the promise really begins to show as 11 sons were born. One daughter, 11 sons were born through the two women and their maids, as now the descendants of Jacob start to proliferate and come up. And that's happened. And so now Jacob has been working for his uncle Laban. He's been working for him. And Laban has been trying to manipulate and go, and so Jacob, we learned last devotion that Jacob and Laban were out trying to outwit each other, and Jacob basically relied on his own understanding of how to crossbreed sheep and goats to multiply his share of the livestock. And Laban was thinking, if you started with no speckled or spotted goats and sheep, you're not going to get hardly any. So they both had a plan, and it looks like Jacob's plan worked out, that he earlier had met his match in deceit with Laban, but now he has come back. And now we're going to see that Jacob actually understands who actually provided for him in that way. And there is again deceit that comes through again. Jacob is now just filled with people who are deceiving him continuously over and over, because that was his sin problem. His name Jacob means heel grabber, means deceiver. And now he's in that situation as he's learning just the pain of deceit and really how to shed that from his life. All the while God is being faithful in his promise as he's building the family. There's a lot of verses here, big story. Let's just read it and let the story come alive to us here. Chapter 31, verse 1. Now Jacob heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what belonged to our father he's made all this wealth. Remember, in chapter 30, Jacob became exceedingly prosperous. Chapter 30, verse 43. And because all the sheep, because of his crossbreeding, turned out to be speckled and spotted, and they were the stronger sheep and goats. So he had a lot of livestock, along with camels and servants. And so the sons were saying, wait a minute, what's happening to our inheritance? Well, verse 2, Jacob saw the attitude of Laban, and behold, it was not friendly toward him as formerly. Jacob noticed there's a change here. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to his flock in the field, and said to them, I see your father's attitude, that it is not friendly toward me as formerly, but the God of my father has been with me. I want you to take note of that statement. The God of my father has been with me. What he noticed is this is the same God that Isaac prayed to. This is the same voice that dealt with Isaac and dealt with Abraham. And Jacob is understanding the times that God has met with him, just like here recently. The Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers, to your relatives, and I'll be with you. So he's been living in a way that's been far from God, but he understands his father Isaac, and he understands his grandfather Abraham, and he understands their situation, their lives, and their stories, and all that. And he understood the God of my father has been with me. Consistent God. Not Jacob's personal God. Consistent, the same God throughout. And he recognized that's where his prosperity's come from. He said, you know that I've served your father with all my strength. He's talking to his daughters now. Rachel and Leah, or his wives. He's talking to Rachel and Leah, his wives. And he said, you know that I've served your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. However, God did not allow him to hurt me. So he cheated him, he changed his wages 10 times, but he recognized he didn't suffer because God was protecting him, not because he's deceitful, not because he's clever. If he spoke thus, meaning Jacob speaking of Laban, if he spoke thus, the speckled shall be your wages, then all the flock brought forth speckled. And if he spoke thus, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock brought forth striped. It just worked out that way. I mean, I put these branches and I ripped the bark because I thought there was something about that. But verse 9 tells us, he says, thus God has taken away your father's livestock and given them to me. It's all of God. It's not because I had some special thing with branches that made the sheep made to make different skin color. God gave it to me. In verse 10, and it came about at the time when the flock were mating that I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the male goats which were mating were striped, speckled, and spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in a dream, Jacob. And I said, here I am. He said, lift up your eyes and see that all the male goats which are mating are striped, speckled, and mottled, for I've seen that all that Laban's been doing to you. I'm the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar, where you made a vow to me. Now rise, leave this land and return to the land of your birth. He's reminding Jacob of the times when he actually was trusting in God. God was leading him back then, but his faith was not so strong, and he was still in the world, living by the flesh, by his deceit. And he said, I am that God that you talked to back then. Same one who protected you here, that gave you all these goats and sheep, all this livestock. So verse 14, Rachel and Leah said to him, do we still have any portion or inheritance in our father's house? Are we not reckoned by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has also entirely consumed our purchase price. They're saying, we've got nothing with our father. We've seen what he's done. He could take us back, and we got nothing. And now we're saying he's treating us as foreigners because we're with Jacob. It's not wise to stay here. So they were starting to see that this is not good, that we're here in Laban's farm and all his land and all of that. Surely all the wealth which God has taken away from our father belongs to us and our children. Now then, do whatever God has said to you. They recognize their husband is very wealthy. They recognize that God has blessed their husband. They do not want to lose that wealth. They're thinking Laban will come and take it some way because we're on his property. So it's not going to work out for us. We probably should be gone from our father, and we need to stay with our husband Jacob. So all this is working out to create a stronger family unit. And then Jacob arose and put his children and his wives upon camels. Remember, he was rich enough to get camels. Didn't have any livestock to begin with. And he drove away all his livestock and all his property which he had gathered, his acquired livestock, which he had gathered in Paddan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan, to his father Isaac. And I think it's helpful to understand. He understands his father is Isaac. When Laban had gone to shear his flock, so now Laban has got his flock on his property and go out, then Rachel stole the household idols that were father's. Just, again, Rachel is not knowing God. She didn't grow up knowing God. She grew up in Laban's household. They were idolaters. They worshipped all kinds of gods. She just knows her husband has this unique relationship with the God of Isaac and the God of Abraham. And somehow through that God, they've gotten great wealth. So she's the dutiful wife, but when she's going to leave, she still has her idolatry, has her false worship, and she grabs a hold of the household idols of Laban. She steals them. And Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he was fleeing. So you got two kinds of deceit going on here. Jacob is still deceitful, but his deceit is just not telling Laban that he's leaving. So he packs it all up to go because he's afraid Laban's going to do something again. Rachel, she deceives by letting her father go out to work, and then she sneaks in and steals his household idols. So all this intrigue is going on in the family here as they're still dealing with their sin of deceit that's everywhere. You see, Jacob is around all these people who deceive because he deceives. Like makes like, you know. You're around the people that are like you. So Jacob, verse 21, he fled with all that he had, and he arose and crossed the Euphrates River and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. So he goes on as hard a gallop as he can, but he's got so much wealth. How do you move fast when you're carrying all that wealth? All those sheep and goats and camels and everything else. Verse 22, when it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, that he took his kinsman with him and pursued him a distance of 7 days' journey. And he overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. So Jacob got 3 days away, but he's moving with a huge herd. Goats and sheep, camels, people. So he's with him and he's going. Now, Laban's got a smaller outfit. He doesn't have to take his herds. He just takes his men and gets on their camels, gets on their horses, and off they go. And after 7 days, he catches up with them. But right before he catches up, verse 24 gives us a nice picture here. God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream of the night and said to him, be careful that you do not speak to Jacob, either good or bad. God intervened. He intervened. Laban was going to hurt Jacob. He was going to come in and cause terror. God came to him in that night in a dream and said, be careful. Don't speak to Jacob, either good or bad. Don't do anything. You're neutral. So verse 25, Laban caught up with Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen camped in the hill country of Gilead. Then Laban said to Jacob, what have you done by deceiving me and carrying away my daughters like captives of the sword? I mean, why did you sneak away like this? That doesn't sound like family. Why did you flee secretly and deceive me and did not tell me so that I might have sent you away with joy, with songs, with timbrel, and with lyre? And didn't allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you've done foolishly. You've insulted the family. See, now he's coming, but he's got to be careful because he had that command in a dream, be careful. So he's asking a question. He's not saying he's doing anything. He's just asking a question. Why do you do these things? That's foolish. In verse 29, now here comes the confession. It is in my power to do you harm. You know I can. But the God of your father, there it is now, the God of your father. Notice that Jacob said in verse 5, it's the God of my father has been with me. And here we see the God of your father, verse 29, spoke to me last night. Be careful not to speak either good or bad to Jacob. He didn't say your God. He didn't say, Jacob, your God talked to me. Jacob has shown no interest that much in God, other than he's had a few dreams and he went and worshipped at Bethel, and he's been going along following, but at a very nominal rate. Just like a child who was raised up in the family religion, but he didn't really take it very seriously, and he's off doing whatever he wants to do. He's a deceiver. But his father Isaac was known to be devout, which means Isaac, his faith was tested and grown just like Abraham's, and he grew. And so Laban recognizes this as the God of Isaac for sure. The God of Isaac. I don't know about the God of Jacob, but I know he's the God of Isaac. So the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful not to speak either good or bad to Jacob. Now you have indeed gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? So now he's recognizing there's something happened. I've got you on something. I have you right here. Aha. It's not up to me. The God of your father said don't say anything. I'm not, but you did something by law that now can be prosecuted. Jacob replied to Laban, because I was afraid, for I thought that you'd take your daughters from me by force. I mean, I know your character. Jacob doesn't know anything about Rachel stealing the household idols. He doesn't know anything about it, so he doesn't think that it happened. So he says, verse 32, the one with whom you find your God shall not live. in the presence of our kinsmen, point out what is yours among my belongings and take it for yourself. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. His own daughter deceived her father. The whole family was just trapped up in deceit. But God is faithful in keeping his promise, and he won't let their sin stop his promise. He's causing their sin to create havoc in their lives. Sure, the consequences of sin are bad, but his promise is not going to be affected. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two maids, but he did not find them. Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. So he's running back and forth in the tents trying to find these idols. Now Rachel had taken the household idols and put them in the camel's saddle, and she sat on them. And Laban felt through all the tent but did not find them. So Rachel's probably pretty nervous here, because her father, her husband just said, whoever you find these idols, whoever they belong to, whoever's holding these idols, they're going to die. So Rachel's pretty nervous, but she is just like her husband. She is a calm, cool cookie. She's not sweating. She's just looking up saying, I've got this. As Laban is tearing apart the tents, trying to find these idols, can't find them. Verse 35, she said to her father, let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the manner of women is upon me. So he searched but did not find the household idols. She used the one thing that she could use. One thing she could use to get Laban to say, okay, I'm not going to deal with that. Surely the idols can't be anywhere near here. She's saying, I'm a woman, and the time of menstruation is happening, and it's just not good for you to be here right now, this horse. Everything is unclean. So I can't rise. I need to kind of stay away from you for now. And he would know this. It's something that they lived with. It's a normal cycle. Okay, I understand that. That's off limits. But let me tear everything else apart. And Jacob became angry and contended with Laban. Jacob said to Laban, what is my transgression? What is my sin that you hotly pursue me? Jacob doesn't know. So now Jacob's accurately getting passionate and saying, you're taking up our time. You got a false accusation. What's going on here? Verse 37, though you have felt through all my goods, what have you found of all your household goods? Set it there before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two. Bring your evidence. You've tearing apart all my goods. You're making life difficult for me. Put your evidence down there. And now he goes to town. Now Jacob, he has a case against Laban. These 20 years I've been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten the rams of your flocks. I've not touched your stuff, Laban. That which was torn of beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. You required it of my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. I replaced basically anything that got stolen by beasts. If my own stuff got stolen, I didn't ask you to replace it. Thus I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the frost by night. My sleep fled from my eyes. I stayed in the field for you, Laban. These 20 years I've been in your house. 20 years. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, 7 for Rachel, but then he found out he married Leah instead, so he served another 7 to get Rachel. Laban tricked him out of 7 hard years of labor. So 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock. And you changed my wages 10 times. So I served you 6 years for your flock. And remember how we started, made an agreement that I would get all the striped and the speckled and the mottled? And what did you do? You culled all of your striped, speckled, and mottled out of your flock, gave them to your sons, and said, now you can pasture my flock, and anything that comes out striped, speckled, or mottled can be yours. Thinking you're going to get nothing. You'll get a few, and that's it. So you really tried to set me up to really have me work for you for nothing. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac. No, isn't that an interesting term? The fear of Isaac. Not the fear of the Lord, the fear of Isaac. The God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been for me, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the toil of my hands, so he rendered judgment last night. What did Laban say? Laban said, the God of your father spoke to me the night before. The God of Isaac spoke to me the night before. What is he now speaking to now? He's saying, if the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac, the fear of my father's God, had not been with me, then you would have taken everything from me. So yes, it is that God. It's not some God I've dreamed up. It's not some God of an idol. It's that God that you're very aware of, Isaac's God. Then Laban replied to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, and the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks. And all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day to these my daughters or to their children whom they've borne? He's saying, yes, you're right, everything did come from me. So now come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. And Jacob took a stone, set it up as a pillar. Jacob said to his kinsmen, gather stones. So they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. So now they're making up this contract agreement that they're putting together. And so they're wanting everything to come together in this contract that they're putting. It's a covenant that they're doing. So they ate there by the heap. Now Laban, verse 47, called it Jegar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Galeed. So they had different names, Aramean and Hebrew. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me this day, a big pile that can remember. That's where we made the covenant. Therefore it was named Galeed, that's Jacob's name for it. And Mizpah, for he said, may the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another. Means the watchtower. The watchtower. So when one's absent, this thing's watching over, seeing, how are you doing? Verse 50. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold the pillar which I have set before you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass by this heap to you for harm, and you will not pass by this heap and this pillar for me for harm. Here's a boundary, basically. You stay that side, I stay this side. But if you mistreat my daughters, God will know. The same God who talked to me will see. So you got to hold up your end of the bargain. In verse 53, the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Again, that was what was really known in Laban's mind. Isaac's God, Abraham's God. Not some new God that he's come up with. It's one that he's very familiar with. So Isaac's saying, yes. Jacob is saying, yes, that is my God. And so I swore by the fear of my father Isaac, the fear of that God. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and called his kinsmen to the meal. And they ate the meal and spent the night on the mountain. Early in the morning Laban rose and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned to his place. So big confrontation that took place. Jacob trying to get out of town, get away from Laban and his property, because Laban will find some other way to take all his possessions, take his wives, just cause him all kinds of grief. He's always trying to find a way to take his wealth. I need to separate. So he tried to, but he had so much property, so much livestock, he couldn't go very fast. So Laban catches up with him. Again, in the deceit of everything, he didn't realize his own wife had deceived everybody by stealing these idols, because she doesn't have a relationship with God, really. She's got a relationship with her husband and his God. Okay, that's fine, but it's obviously not connecting into her heart. Jacob has had some experience with God. He's had some visions, and God spoke to him about my promise to Abraham, my promise to Isaac, and I promise to give you this land. But he never really is trusted. He's always trying to get everything by his own deceit. But he's slowly getting pulled in as God is putting him now in a situation where he's around nothing but a group of deceivers who are often better than he is. And he's trusting in God. And he recognized that in the first part of the chapter here, that it is the God of my father has been with me. 31 verse 5. And verse 7, God did not allow him to hurt me. Verse 9, thus God has taken away your father's livestock and given them to me. First time he's acknowledged God is fulfilling his promise to him, not his own deceit has made it all work. So he is slowly being drawn to God. And we're going to see, coming up in the next devotion, he's going to meet that God. And that's when everything's going to change for Jacob. We'll see you there on the next devotion.